question for Fumi, if I can start. Just the last piece that you played, did you say you wrote that piece to go with that song? You wrote the first piece and you wrote the last piece also, or that was just the last piece that you wrote?
Oh, I mean, the first 3 songs are based on the Japanese songs, so I arranged them for me to play, and then this is totally my original piece.
Awesome.
The last one was.
It was really lovely.
It was beautiful.
I got a question for me also. Did you show that teacher what you do now?
She doesn't know what I'm doing. I just tell her what she wants to hear.
Oh my God. She should know how wonderful an experience it is for the audience to experience that.
I have a question for Daniel. It was kind of interesting to listen to your poems because at the same time they're kind of like really conversational. You have a lot of interjections, like you're having a conversation and you have to ask a lot of questions in your poetry, but at the same time there's like a really vivid like sense of place and like you describe like things that are going on and like a scene that's happening. So I was wondering about your like writing process and what you think about when you like start to write a poem, like where you start and like what's your writing process like, I guess?
I think when I come to a blank page, if I put myself in front of it, like I hope I'm excited to be there, but that never happens. Usually, like sucks to be in front of a blank page, and so then I have to make something happen. And every decision I make, I hope it's an exciting one, and that's the best and only reason I could think of to do that. And so when it comes to like, oh, okay, I've described like something that's in a picture frame, then I hope someone talks, and then I hope they say something that's just like desperate and awesome. It has to be said, and if they don't say it the right way, then I've just ruined the event. And if the thing that comes after that doesn't just, have to be a crucial choice, a crucial selection, even if it seems like a mistake, then yeah, I like to try and barrel through, but make sure that different things are happening, or else I would get bored, frankly. And if I get bored, then that's not good for other people too. If I'm going to force them, like hold them hostage for 23 minutes or whatever. Yeah. Thank you.
Tom, did you like that?
Yeah, I'd like to ask the same question to Darla and Nikki. I mean, it seems to me like you've got a little more response than some do, There's a difference between a person that recites the poetry that they've written and a person that, kind of improvises and stuff. And the reading seems to get a little bit more response, and I just would like you to have comment on that, as a person that has a little bit of trouble getting a response sometimes.
Referring to yourself when you say
Yeah.
So like, since you have trouble getting response.
Every poem for me starts out as a feeling. So I have an energy before I ever have a word for it. And I feel that once I find a word for the feeling, it's going to move me, and hopefully it will move other people as well. But sometimes I do a lot of open mics, and I've been performing for a long time. And in that process, it's interesting to see some people play to the crowd purposefully. That's where you get into the idea of slam, because it seems like there's certain topics or certain phrases that are going to score higher. And I've always just wanted to be true to the point I was trying to make. But I've been caught in my ego before when it was like about the response. But I had to make sure that I don't make it about the response, but I make it about that feeling or that story firsthand. So be true to the story. And I think that's what's important above anything else, is be true to your artistry. Because otherwise, what makes me different from someone who's just a corporation trying to make a label versus true art?
Other questions?
I was just going to ask, I was thinking, do you write?
Can you speak up, Clara?
Do you write short stories as well, or do you just do it as poetry? I mean, your stories are they're really interesting to me. And so I was wondering if you put them in a story form besides the one you did with poetry?
Yeah, I think I write short stories and call them poetry. I think that's what happened. And so I thought about that, doing the creative nonfiction and working in that. So that's actually what I've been working on recently. And I actually want to take the stories of my Oma and of my father, and because he was born in El Dorado in Argentina, and the stories he told growing up versus the life I live is such something that when my Oma passed, I thought, oh, we lost. But I realized, they live as long as we tell those stories. So thanks for inspiring me to want to go back to that project.
Other questions? I wanted to ask you, Nikki, one question. You are someone that I admire, not just for your work. And there's a few folks in Milwaukee, fortunately, there's a few folks in our region who I really admire for this reason. You're someone who I admire not just for your work, but for what a lot of people call the work of poetry. Like this is so clearly not like, oh, I'm a manic genius scribbling away alone in my room, like that's where it ends. Like you are taking your art into the community, building community around, the art that you do, that other people do. I was wondering if you would just be willing to talk about a few of the things that you're doing in Milwaukee around that, and just your kind of like philosophy behind that.
So I work with a lot of nonprofits, and I work in a lot of different schools. My path has been ever so changing. As soon as I think I know what I'm doing, it changes. Being a classroom teacher, I was very confined to the ways of a classroom teacher. So now that I'm the artist, I get to be the one that goes into that classroom. It's the fun one they want to see. Anyone with a teacher, right? But a lot of my writing, I have to say, is boring. It's very therapeutic. It's very journal. And that's kind of the process of where I start with a lot of youth, is realizing it's kind of a journal entry. And then the development of the writing comes later, the figurative language and revising. And I think when you talk about being like, there's many artists that have trouble because there might be a genius. I know this woman who's a brilliant comedian, a brilliant poet, but she has no sense of time management, no sense of goal setting, so it's kind of lost. And people might want her to book a show, but they can't trust her. So I think what's amazing, and it's kind of a struggle, is to be a poet and to be a business person and to be all these different hats. Because then you're your own boss, your own media agent. I don't know if either of you work with a team or anyone that assists you in what you do, or is it all you planning your flights and hotels?
Oh, I mean, yeah, but like I have a small life going on, so it gets to just be a one-man team, so that's fine.
Well, your chapter had some team.
No, on that I got to team up with a coworker who I guess had nothing to do on Monday night and Tuesday. So I can't wait to shower her with the proceeds and make it feel like it was worth it or whatever. But yeah, I mean, you're otherwise desperately alone. So I mean, it's expensive to invest in art, and I scarcely mean financially, but that's a different conversation. You have to put so much into it by yourself, and it takes a lot out of you, and it's worth it to give that much. So if you can get help from someone else, you know what that's doing with you, then you get what it's taking from them to work on it too. So it's spectacular when you have more than one person who gives a shit about it.
Can I ask you the same question? Do you do most of your art? Obviously, you have your family that supports you.
You're like, I need a team. I'm going to create that.
Well, lately, my family is my team. They are the one who inspires me to write and make arrangements. Today it was all about my Japanese culture, because it's January. That's where Japanese go. I'll do a lot of things, so it reminded me of Japanese. But I do a lot of arrangement for hymnals and other things. But it's my children, my husband, who loves to sing, so that really makes me to arrange something for that, so that 4 of us can play. But actually, in my composition, inspiration, the thing it really motivated me to do more playing my own original songs came from teaching little children. I used to teach a group lessons for 4 years old, 4 to 6 years old children when my children were young, and the children were such full of energy. And as much as I hated organizing the class, but what I get from children, the energy was so great. And what I used to do was that, because children have so much imagination, if I play this way, they will just react to different gestures and they start making stories. I play it and then they start making stories, or sometimes I tell a story in the play and then they react. And when I started doing that, kids loved it, so I just, that energy became kind of more like a contagious thing that I wanted to do more. These days I don't, I'm more confined in a school setting. I only teach classroom piano, accompanying students, in a big college society. But yeah, this is something, I don't know, I'm answering your question, but just, yeah.
I wanted to give the perspectives of how different artists form, so thank you.
Yeah.
And the question you had asked about like what's going on in Milwaukee. I also, as a classroom teacher, found that the poetry, when you talk about response, a lot of the youth felt the emotional connection to me as a teacher, and poetry became a vehicle. Milwaukee, they talk about how segregated it is, and it's like not just talk, it's very true. And so I was able to use poetry to just get people to see things differently on many different sides of the playing field. And so poetry became that voice. When I was a classroom teacher teaching 8th grade, many students were losing people to violence, especially gun violence in the city of Milwaukee. And so we just started doing poetry and things around that and working with artists, and we like build memorials, and we also talk about heroes and people we looked up to on the positive side. But I've been writing with different nonprofits. We have an open mic once a month. We also, I work with, this is Express Yourself Milwaukee. They have a big show May 7th. They're actually bringing John Santiago Baca here from New York in, I think it's March. So if anybody is interested, he's an amazing poet. He found his voice while he was in the penal system and in jail. And he became a poet. Now he makes a living traveling the world, teaching poetry in prisons and outside of prisons. So looking to people like that, looking to like, what can poetry do? Because a lot of people will say, oh, don't be a poet, you won't make any money. And it's not like you're trying to rise to fame, but to be able to give a piece of yourself, like you said, there's nothing more enjoyable and freeing than that. And leaving that legacy for other young people to see. It's not a cookie cutter profession where you have to follow somebody else's recipe. I always criticize myself because I'm a spoken word artist, I'm a performer, I'm not really a poet. Some people would see me, right? But I had to realize, well, if it's just a story, at least hopefully it'll be entertaining and connecting to someone. Whereas another poet might have a different angle, and it's okay for them to be original. And that's what I try to tell the youth. They're so worried about fitting into this culture of America and losing their culture. And I say, embrace what you can and speak that culture and that language in your stories. And find new ways to adapt and change. So poetry in Milwaukee, I think, is pretty strong. And there's an open mic every night of the week. Though we lost our slam team, so you'll have a slam team on.
Oh!
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, the people who are running it. Patricia Kelly, she kind of retired from that. So I'll have to come down here and help you guys join.
Any last question? Going once? Going twice? Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to buy all sorts of things that the performers brought. We're going to take flyers and we're going to put them up in different places in our lives. We might buy Bonk shirts, I don't know. We might buy them for ourselves. We might buy them as gifts for everyone we know. I want to thank, all the people who put this together today. I want to especially thank the people who introduced the performers today, and Naomi, who brought her keyboard for us to be able to hear from me. Lastly, we're excited over Naomi. Lastly, really want to thank our performers, and really want to thank all of you guys for being here. Let's give it up for these.